The oracle's words stand as a warning, a prophecy. Sparta will fall. All of Greece will fall.
Rise of an Empire is a successor to Zack Snyder's testosterone war movie 300, and it shows what was happening at the same time on the other side of Greece. As Leonidas and his brave six-pack Spartans were holding the Persian land forces back at the Hot Gates, the Persian fleet was met by a small number of Athenian vessels, led by an amazing cinematic hero called Testicles. The result of which is a movie so fantastic and worthy that it launched the 300 series of films into stardom with many more installments, like the one they were planning about the American Revolutionary War. If you couldn't tell, I am being sarcastic. In reality, Rise of an Empire was such a massive step down from the first movie that all that could be done for it was type F in the chat. It made way less of an impression, it made way less money, and based on that, the whole thing was put to rest. Which did piss me off because the series was such a great way to cover historical battles that we don't otherwise get to see on the big screen anymore. And that's not to say there's nothing good here. There is, mainly in form of the commander of the Persian fleet, Artemisia, played by Eva Green, who's basically carrying the movie on her back. She's relentless, she's unfair, she's messed up beyond repair. Pretty much the only thing here fully worthy of the level we got used to. I won't lie and say there's no cool action, but it never compares to last time, which is the one thing you have to do in these successors in a series of movies. Be able to compare to last time.
Not quite my tempo.
And as for reasons why Rise of an Empire became such a failure, the biggest one of all is just that. It's a successor in a series. Not a sequel necessarily, but a successor. And when you're succeeding a series of movies, there's always foundational rules giving the series its identity that you have to follow. In Cloverfield, for example, one of those rules would be the supernatural. If there's ever a Cloverfield movie with no monsters, no aliens, nothing supernatural, then it's not really Cloverfield, is it?
Jesus Christ, you are a worthless little piece of shit.
Whereas in 300, the biggest foundational rules I would say are these: a strong hero, an exaggerated world, and a clear logistical essence. Those are the key things giving the series its identity. Those are what Rise of an Empire flops at. So today, let's see exactly how, not only to understand why this movie failed, but also to know better in the future if the series does ever return, which I do think will happen eventually. Here's a couple of key examples of rules in a series and what happens when you fail them. Also, since we're now moving into Christmas, this will be my second to last video for 2022. So to thank all of you for watching this year, let's do another Filmento giveaway with, you know what, displays, these high quality metal sheet posters that they sent me to show that I can then give out. I got a batch of new designs from House of Dragon to Harry Potter to Rick and Morty to even Wanda. I know quite a few of you Wanda fans don't like me very much thanks to that video this year, but I like all of you. I like everyone who watches my stuff. So just comment below your favorite or least favorite Filmento video in 2022 so that I know what works and where to improve, and I'll select a few. And also, Display is once again sponsoring another 2-week Filmento Christmas discount of 20 to 30% off everything on their site. So check it out because they have an endless amount of cool designs from movies to games to whatever, with a growing list of official big name partners. All the designs are printed on metal, which makes them very high quality and easy to hang up and swap out in seconds. Just stick a magnet with a protective leaf on the wall and ta-da!
I think I'm about to steal!
So yeah, check them out with the link below, and there you go. The first rule of the series broken here is a strong hero, something which is nowhere to be found. In the first movie, Leonidas was a great character overall because he was a person. We got to see where he comes from, who he is, and what makes him so. But more than that, he was strong, not only physically, but narratively. The movie was like a long list of challenges that he had to face. He climbs a mountain to hear an oracle deny him an army for war because he'll lose, and yet he goes anyway.
I'm here, just taking a stroll. These 300 men are my personal bodyguard.
He gets offered a free pass at the cost of Sparta's freedom, which he refuses. That is strength. Whereas with Testicles, it's the opposite. He's not even a real person. We get to know nothing about him. Halfway into the movie, he says he doesn't have a family and instead dedicated his whole life to the Navy, which is news to the audience. I mean, the secondary villain who's barely in the movie gets explored more as a person than the hero, which is a problem if you want us to care about the hero. But more importantly, Testicles is a weak hero, not physically weak. That's made clear right away. But narratively weak, because his path through the journey is mostly quite insignificant. He doesn't have to face real challenges to build himself up. In his first non-action scene, Testicles is asking politicians for ships to fight the Persian fleet, and that's it. He gets everyone's attention because of who he is. He says he needs ships, to which one guy says something negative, and that's the scene. There's no obstacle to overcome here. There's no contention or a clear winner. Like, did he even get the ships or not?
We will need our children to join the fight. You send every ship that we have to the northern coast of Euboea.
In another scene, Testicles is sitting at home as his friend tells him info about their enemy. Info unlocked by the friend. Testicles had nothing to do with it, meaning that he's just sitting there getting this stuff for free, which isn't too powerful.
Artemisia is murderous by trade, with true skill on the sea, and she has thirst for
In another scene, Testicles goes to Sparta to ask for help, and that's it. He asks the queen says no, and he leaves. The end. Nothing was struggled over, nothing was done or achieved. The scene is so meaningless that it could have just been taken out of the movie and replaced with ADR.
Oh, and by the way, the Spartans will not join us.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh.
Even in the battles, it's gone the same story. Things just happen. First, we watch whatever random boat-on-boat action where Testicles' forces give the Persians a spanking, and then afterwards the movie says it's because Testicles is a master tactician. Oh, the Athenian ships were sailing in a circle. Oh, the Persians were led into a trap that was never established. What a mastermind.
He's got him right where he wants him.
He's a fine tactician.
I don't see it. I don't really see anything. All I see is a boring dude with great abs who floats through the events of the movie like a bucket in a stream. And to see how it's done properly, look at Artemisia. Look at how most of her scenes are about challenges for her to overcome or be changed by. In her introduction, she cleanses the god king Xerxes' palace of his allies and manipulates him to go to war so that she can get her revenge.
Glory's sake. For vengeance' sake.
Quite the task. In her second scene, she's faced with a Greek prisoner who tries to make her look bad in front of her men because of what she is.
You Persian men take your orders from a Greek woman.
As in, her status is called into question. It's a challenge laid before her. A challenge that she, well...
Yes, my brother, I am Greek by birth, but my heart is Persian.
Oh, her commanders aren't able to deliver. Well, time for a change in command. Oh, her men can't do what they're supposed to. Well, fine then. Even when Artemisia loses, it still contributes to her strength. We learn that as a child she was kidnapped and R-worded by Greek sailors for years and years until she was discarded as trash, which does make her look very small. Everything she had was basically lost. But what she does with that loss is take it and turn it into rage. She uses it to become the biggest cause of death for Greeks since the plague. You know, a weak character falls down and stays there. A strong character falls down and rises up, changed by the fall. Point is that the way to build a strong hero is to face them off with challenges that build them as such. When all the hero has to do to keep his men together after loss is say that, yeah, we lost, who wants to stay?
I will not judge you. You are free to leave. You are still free men. Very well.
That's not strength. But when the hero has to face the toughest seduction effort in history and still manages to keep himself intact,
I offer freedom without consequence or responsibility. Join me.
No.
that is strength. That's a strong guy right there. The second series rule broken here is that the world and the contents of it aren't exaggerated enough. The first movie, for example, was told through an unreliable narrator, a Spartan soldier hyping up his army with tales of Leonidas and his brave 300, meaning that it's quite far-fetched in terms of enemies, which kept escalating from basic soldiers with great numbers to all kinds of beasts from across the realm, to sorcerers fighting with black magic, to elite Persian assassins who decorate trees with people, to whatever crazy monsters the Persian Empire could produce. And in terms of the culture and myths as well, with oracles and bottomless pits and mutant hunchbacks and gods among men and wolves made out of the dead. Pretty extreme. Whereas in Empire, that exaggeration is brought down to pretty mundane levels, relatively speaking. The enemies, for example, are mostly the same. First, we fight basic Persians on a beach, then we fight basic Persians on ships, and then we fight basic Persians on a reef. When there are some special kinds of commanders, they get dealt with right away. When there are some special kinds of ships, they get dealt with half accidentally right away. When there are some special kinds of soldiers like Artemisia's personal guard, they're ultimately just basic bomb-carrying men who do nothing other than swim and blow up. I'm not saying the action itself here isn't exaggerated, because it is. We have crazy stuff like the Sea of Athens setting on fire, we have the hero riding a horse across flaming ships, we have Artemisia and her elite assassins finally joining the fight at the end, which is pretty nuts. But I am saying that other than Artemisia, there's no new kind of escalation in the opponent's side that would make us think that Leonidas and his men were lucky they don't have to be here to face them. Like, no, these guys are lucky they don't have to be at the hot gates. Even on the good guy side, we've gone from soldiers training their entire lives to farmers and merchants from down the street.
Without Spartans, we're just farmhands.
It is quite a downgrade overall. And in the culture and myth side of this, there's not much either, especially nothing new. You know, this movie's theme is more about ships and the sea, meaning that there's so many mythical sea creatures and sea elements to utilize. Except they're not utilized. Even when they supposedly are, it's just a tiny bait for the trailer. And when you're making a 300 movie, you gotta really push what you have. If this battle at sea was suddenly interrupted by a massive sea serpent, that would drastically increase people's need to see the movie because there's not too many places to see something like it. Of course, I'm a bit biased for obvious reasons, but it would have totally fit the movie to have those water monsters be real rather than a dream. Maybe that's Artemisia's plan. She wants to get the Athenians close to water level so she can unleash this Persian dinosaur shark to devour them, and the scene would be about the heroes having to survive it. Now you'd have something special that's a worthy addition to the predecessor. For example, if you ever make a 300 movie about the frontier of the American Revolution, you have to push the specialty of that. There's gotta be crazy elite British soldiers with crazy old-timey weaponry. There's gotta be grey wolves the size of a car, or bald eagles that can rip your head clean off, or a freaking Bigfoot. You know, take the idea of man versus beast from The Revenant and exaggerate it with a Bigfoot, and suddenly you have something that pretty much only this series of movies can offer. If you don't, then you have just another war movie about the American frontier. Whereas for it to be a 300 movie about the American frontier, the dial has to be pushed to the absolute max and beyond. The third key series rule broken here is that the logistical essence is way too shallow and convoluted to function. The first movie, for example, was about one historical battle and it was very clear. The Persian army is coming for Greece, including Sparta, and the only way for the Spartans to hold them off is at this narrow canyon where the uneven numbers don't matter. That's where we'll hold them, because if we can't hold them, everyone and everything we've spent time with will be reduced to cinder. Understandable, believable, and emotionally investable.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Whereas in Empire, none of those three logistical components work. First off, the stakes of the movie are about the fate of Athens, which is a problem because we haven't really ever been in Athens. We don't know a single person in Athens. We don't care about Athens or if the Persians get there or not. So already, there goes the emotional investment. Secondly, the logistics are also much harder to understand in terms of time and space. The movie opens with the first Persian assault 10 years ago where Thesticles drove them back by killing their king. which is there to give an origin to Xerxes despite him not having any real purpose in the rest of the movie. And so now in present day, the Persians are coming back with a vengeance, with a fleet that outnumbers the Athenian vessels 1,000 to 1. And overall, it's pretty confusing. It's never clear where we are or why we're there specifically. It's never clear what the strategic value of the battle is. It's never clear what happens if we fail. It's not like the Hot Gates, which are established to be the Persians' only way further into Greece. No, it's like sometimes we're fighting somewhere at sea, and other times we're fighting on reefs that come seemingly out of nowhere. The Persians attack us head-on instead of sailing around for some reason. We're sacrificing all our lives to hold them here for some reason. All of this is very important for some reason. You know, despite us already knowing that the Persians got through on land, despite it ultimately being Leonidas' last stand that makes the only real difference here.
Spartans! Prepare for glory!
And so you have to be way more understandable with the battle you choose. Maybe the Persian fleet is trying to get ashore so they can rearm the land forces and this way allow them to march further inland. Maybe they need to sail through this specific patch of coastal sea to get through to their meeting place. Maybe the longer the Athenian navy holds them back, the more time they buy for the rest of Greece to get itself together. Now I'd understand what all this is for and in what way. Now it would be more than people just kind of fighting. And thirdly, the believability of all this is pretty shaky, because the problem from the Persian side is quite simple. Just send a ton of ships to surround the Athenian blockade and rain fire on them from all 360 degrees all day, every day. There you go, I already beat the movie for you. It's not like the Hot Gates where there's only one very narrow path to attack from. But of course, the reason that can't happen is because the movie would just end, so instead it makes up all these excuses to keep itself alive. The Persians send only a handful of ships at a time, directly head-on, and when they sink, they just give up for the day.
Pull back. Let them have this day.
Why?
And when the Persians finally do get into combat, they're so useless this time around that they can't beat a small pack of farmers and merchants, which in of itself is a lot tougher to buy than a fight against the toughest and most dedicated soldiers in history. Overall, whatever historical battle you cover next time, just make it logistically sound so that it's emotionally investable, understandable, that it's believable enough to suspend disbelief. Follow that signature series rule with the others we discussed, and chances are you're gonna have a result that's more like 300 and less like 404.